So this is the brand new OnePlus N30, and the price point of this phone is $299. When I saw the price of this guy, I got super excited because phones these days generally don't suck. It's really hard to make a bad phone. And for $299, a OnePlus device seems like a very attractive offer. But there was one problem that happened after the Pixel 7a was introduced onto the market. The Pixel 6a, which is still being sold today, got a price drop. Right now, this phone sells for $299 US or $379, which also happens to be the exact same price as the OnePlus N30 here in Canada. And look, I always believe context is king, like you have to have something to compare it to in order to know what you're really getting. And I feel like because of these price points, these two phones are a perfect comparison. Now, a lot of you don't live in Canada or the US, and the Pixel tends to be a bit more expensive, but here's the thing for you guys. You guys have access to a lot more phones, so it's a very different but more competitive market. Now, if you're a one-handed user, the Pixel 6a is obviously the better choice. This is a phone with a 6.1-inch display compared to a bigger 6.72. This is taller, it's wider, it's a bit heavier, still very light, especially when you compare it to, let's say, a Galaxy Note. The build materials are also different, slightly cheaper on the OnePlus N30. Plastic back, which by the way gets a ton of fingerprints. Like, I cleaned it off before this video started and it's already very, very dirty. You also have a plastic frame, but of course you do get a glass display. The Pixel 6a has a plastic back, just like the N30, but instead it uses an aluminum frame, and of course you have that glass display. Now, you do get some extra perks if you decide to go with the OnePlus N30. For example, it does have a headphone jack on the bottom of the device, which is really good to see these days. And if you plan on increasing the storage amount, you actually get a micro SD card inside of here. So you can move this up to 1 terabyte. But if you're frolicking in the rain or sweating a lot or dropping your phone in a puddle of water, the OnePlus N30 does not have an official IP rating, whereas the Pixel 6a is IP67. So there's a little bit more of an assurance. The front-facing cameras are both on the exact same position, so there's no difference there. With the Pixel 6a, it's 8 megapixels compared to the 16 megapixel on the OnePlus N30. I'll be honest with you, the Pixel 6a just takes better photos overall. The front-facing camera just did a better job of exposing my skin. The colors looked a lot more vibrant, and it was just a more pleasing picture to look at. The N30, on the other hand, kind of just washed my face out. It brightened up the image way too much, and it made me look very ghostly. It also just wasn't a sharp photo. All right, now you're looking at the front-facing camera of the OnePlus N30 and the Pixel 6a. Hard to tell the difference on the phone itself, but you guys let me know which microphone sounds better, and obviously which one has the better video. Now, both of these devices do have dual speakers, so you do have stereo sound, and I found the overall sound quality to be louder on the OnePlus N30, but to be a little cleaner on the Pixel 6a. As for the display quality, this is where the Pixel 6a really shines. We're talking about an OLED panel. It's full HD display. Yes, it's only 60 Hz, but it's one of the better 60 Hz displays out there. It doesn't feel like your typical 60 Hz display, but obviously it's never gonna beat a high refresh rate like 120 Hz that you get on the OnePlus N30. From an overall color reproduction, the colors look more vibrant, they look crispier. On the Pixel, the OnePlus N30 is using an IPS panel, so things look a bit more dull. Not that IPS panels are bad, this is just not one of the better IPS panels out there. Also, if you're outdoors a lot, the Pixel 6a will get brighter. I believe it can go over 700 nits of brightness compared to the 500 to 600 nits that you'd get on the OnePlus N30. But battery life is where the OnePlus N30 really excels, because this has a 5,000 milliamp hour battery compared to around 4,100 milliamp hours on the Pixel 6a. Look, none of these phones support wireless charging, but a lot of you prefer fast charging, and if that's what you want, you're not going to get that on the Pixel. I think the fastest you can charge it is 18 watts, whereas with the OnePlus N30, you have the 50 watt charging capabilities, which can top up this device super quickly. And this phone can get me 2 days. The Pixel 6a is a 1-day phone. Like, I'm charging it every single night before I go to bed. When it comes to haptics, I'm giving it to the Pixel. It felt like a good punch to the finger, like you're using more of a Mac touchpad rather than a really bad plastic touchpad on a gaming laptop. Whereas the OnePlus N30 was more of a vibration to your finger. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. It felt like a fart, like a dirty fart to the finger, whereas with the Pixel, it just felt like a good punch. But performance is interesting. I was really expecting this OnePlus N30 to beat the Pixel, considering that Google tends to put older hardware inside of their phones and optimize it. But this Google Tensor chip is actually quite a bit faster than the Snapdragon 695 they're using in the OnePlus N30. Now look, none of these phones felt slow in day-to-day use. Doesn't matter if I was browsing the web, checking my email, just all the general stuff most people do, they both feel fast and fluid. Now you do get 8 gigabytes of memory with the OnePlus N30 compared to 6. They both come with 128 gigabytes of storage, but if I had to use a phone day in, day out for a few years, this Pixel device is gonna give you better performance for longer. Now the camera is probably the most important part of this review because you buy a Pixel for the camera. You definitely don't buy a OnePlus N30 for the camera, because the camera on this smartphone, even though it's 108 megapixels, is really not that great. Like you do have two 2-megapixel sensors on the bottom. One is a depth sensor, the other one is for your macro lens, but there's no ultra wide and there's no telephoto. If you want to punch in, you got to crop in using the 108 megapixel sensor. Whereas with the Pixel 6a, you get one 12 megapixel wide lens and then you get one 12 megapixel ultra wide lens. Personally, I'd rather have an ultra wide lens than a bigger sensor overall because that doesn't guarantee better photos. And this doesn't matter the situation you're in. The Pixel 6a takes better photos 99.9% of the time. The only time that you can see a benefit to the OnePlus N30 is because of the way it takes the photo. It brightens up the image, it overexposes, it makes everything look a bit too mushy, it's not as sharp, and because of that, you'll sometimes get more detail in the shadow, but detail overall is not that great. Especially when you're using the 3x zoom on this compared to 2x on the Google Pixel, like they're both punching in, it always looks sharp on the Pixel, whereas on the OnePlus N30, it doesn't look sharp at all. It looks very mushy. Then when it comes to night photos, again, it's like night and day, literally. It doesn't matter what photo you take, the Pixel 6a does a better job. I also found that the OnePlus N30 would sometimes struggle to autofocus on a subject and I have to take the picture 2 or 3 times to get it perfectly. And look, that's not a good situation you're in. When you want to take a photo, you want to rely on your camera, be able to take the snapshot right away and have something to use later. Not look back at your photos and be like, oh great, everything's blurry. Then when it comes to video, again, the Pixel 6a does a better job. You can shoot up to 4K, whereas this phone tops out at Full HD. And again, there's just no competition here. Not only does the Pixel have better stabilization, the colors look better, there's more detail, it's just a better video overall. Even the little details, like Bluetooth 5.1 compared to 5.2 on the Pixel. I know that's not a big deal, but you do get some battery benefits with Bluetooth 5.2, especially if you're listening to a lot of audio. The optimization to the compression is a lot better. You don't lose any quality, but you do save a little bit of battery life, especially if you're a music lover and you're using your device to listen to audio all day long. As for software, I'm giving it to the Pixel. Again, this is very subjective. Not everyone's gonna agree with me here, but I think it just looks a lot cleaner. I like the way the icons look, the bubbles, the notification layout. It's just a very clean version of Android, and I love Google's vision for it. Now, don't get me wrong, Oxygen OS looks great on this device. It's not getting in the way. There's no crazy pop-ups. It's a very clean experience, but I'm starting to see a lot of Oppo's ColorOS make its way through. But the one thing I don't like about the N30 is its update schedule. You're only getting one major release of Android, and that's it. Like, they're giving you 3 years of security updates, but only one major release of Android. Now, when the Pixel 6a came out, it was 3 years of major Android releases, but you got 5 years of security. So even though this phone is 1 year old, you're still getting 2 more major versions of Android plus 4 more versions of Android security updates. So here's the real issue. The OnePlus N30 is not a terrible phone. It's actually pretty good for a budget device, but it's being compared to another budget or affordable phone with a premium camera. And that's really what sets these two things apart. Camera on the Pixel 6a is so good. that it's really hard for me to even recommend the OnePlus N30 over it, especially when we're talking about a price tag that's literally identical. If you're here in North America, it's an absolute no-brainer. The Pixel 6a makes a lot more sense. But in other parts of the world where there's a lot more competition and the Pixel lineup is generally more expensive, the OnePlus N30 might be a lot more attractive. If you have any more questions, let me know in the comment section down below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.